Sometimes the smallest hands carry the biggest hearts, and sometimes wisdom comes disguised as child's play. In our rush through life, we often forget that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear worn sneakers and carry backpacks, too big for their shoulders. 7-year-old Amara waits outside the community center for her brother, watching Sister Agnes feed the pigeons like she does every day. The neighborhood calls her the bird lady because of her gentle way with the creatures others shoo away. When Sister Agnes suddenly grabs her chest and falls back on the bench, struggling to breathe, everyone else walks by without noticing. But little Amara sees everything. She remembers something her mother taught her during her grandmother's final. In days, a special rhythm with gentle motions that her mother called magic breaths. Without knowing what she's really doing, Amara begins the movements and humming her mother showed her. What could a child possibly know about the difference between life and death? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun filtered through thin curtains in the 3rd floor apartment where Amara lived with her mother Maya and 15-year-old brother Jamal. Their home sat above Mrs. Rodriguez's corner market, and the familiar sounds of the neighborhood waking up drifted through the windows. Delivery trucks rumbling past, children calling to each other on their way to school, and the gentle hum of daily life beginning again. Amara sat at the small kitchen table, carefully spooning cereal into her mouth while watching her mother prepare for another long day. Maya moved with practiced efficiency, braiding Amara's hair while simultaneously packing lunches and checking that Jamal had remembered his basketball gear. At 28, Maya carried herself with a quiet strength that spoke of responsibilities. Shouldered too young, dreams deferred but not abandoned. "Mama, why do you always look tired in the mornings?" Amara asked, her voice carrying the innocent directness that often caught adults off guard. Maya paused in her movements, meeting her daughter's concerned gaze. "Sometimes grown-ups carry a lot of thoughts, baby girl. But seeing your face every morning makes everything lighter." Jamal emerged from the bedroom they shared, already dressed in his school clothes with his basketball shoes hanging around his neck. He ruffled Amara's freshly braided hair, earning a protest that lacked any real annoyance. Despite the 5-year age gap and his teenage attempts at coolness, Jamal maintained a protective tenderness toward his little sister that everyone in the neighborhood recognized. "You walking me to the center today?" Amara asked him, though she already knew the answer. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Jamal had late basketball practice, which meant Amara would wait for him at the community center rather than coming straight. "Home. Course I am, but you remember the rules, right?" Amara recited them with the patience of repetition. "Stay where Mrs. Patterson can see me. Don't talk to strangers. If something feels wrong, find an adult I know." Maya kissed both children goodbye, her work uniform, scrubs for her morning job at the elderly care facility, already making her look ready to care for others. She worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat. Mornings at Sunset Manor, evenings cleaning, offices downtown. The schedule left little time for rest, but Maya never complained where the children could hear. "I'll pick you up at 6, Jamal. Amara, you be good for your brother." After Maya left, the apartment felt larger and quieter. Jamal gathered his backpack and Amara's smaller one, checking that she had her juice box and the crackers Maya always packed. These morning routines had developed over the years, small rituals that provided stability in their sometimes unpredictable world. The walk to school took them past the heart of their neighborhood, a collection of modest homes, small businesses, and the community center that served as an anchor for local families. Amara loved these walks because Jamal would point out details she might miss, how Mr. Washington always watered his flowers at exactly the same time, how the stray cat behind the bakery had finally learned to trust people enough to let them approach. "See that lady there?" Jamal pointed toward a figure in grey, approaching the small park adjacent to the community centre. "That's Sister Agnes. She comes every day to feed the pigeons." Amara watched the elderly woman move with deliberate care, carrying a small paper bag and walking with the kind of measured steps that spoke of someone who had learned to move gently through the world. Sister Agnes wore simple clothes, a grey sweater despite the warm weather, comfortable walking shoes, and a small silver cross that caught the morning light. "Why do people call her the Bird Lady?" Amara asked. "Watch and you'll see," as if responding. To some invisible signal, pigeons began gathering around Sister Agnes's feet. She settled onto a park bench and began distributing breadcrumbs with careful attention, making sure every bird received its share. Her movements were patient and methodical, and Amara noticed how she spoke softly to the pigeons, as if they were old friends. "She used to teach at the Catholic school before it closed," Jamal explained. "Now she volunteers at different places, helps people when they need it. Mama says she's good people." At school, Amara's teacher, Ms. Williams, noticed her distracted attention during morning lessons. Amara was typically an engaged student, quick to raise her hand and eager to participate in discussions. Today, however, she kept glancing toward the windows that faced the community center, her mind returning to the image of Sister Agnes and her gentle way with the pigeons. "Amara, would you like to share what you're thinking about?" Ms. Williams asked during their reading circle. "I was wondering about taking care of things," Amara said slowly. "Like, how do you know what someone needs if they can't tell you?" Ms. Williams smiled at the question's thoughtfulness. "That's a very wise thing to wonder about. What made you think of that?" "There's this lady who feeds birds every day. She acts like she knows exactly what they need, even though they can't talk." To her. The other children began sharing their own observations about animals and caring, and Ms. Williams guided the discussion toward empathy and attention. But Amara's mind kept returning to Sister Agnes and to something else, a memory that felt important but remained just out of reach. That memory belonged to the final weeks of her grandmother's life, when their small apartment had been filled with quiet conversations, hushed phone calls, and the presence of hospice nurses who moved through their home with professional gentleness. Amara had been only 5 then, too young to fully understand, but old enough to sense the gravity of what was happening. Her grandmother, Nana Rose, had been Maya's anchor and support system. She had helped raise Jamal and Amara while Maya worked, and attended community college classes, dreaming of becoming a nurse. When Nana Rose became sick, Maya had dropped out of school to care for her, a decision that still carried weight in their household conversations. During those difficult weeks, Maya had taught Amara a special game to help cope with the sadness and fear. Magic breaths, she called them, showing Amara how to place her hands in a specific pattern and create a rhythm that could help someone feel calmer. They would practice together during the long afternoons when Nana Rose rested, with Maya explaining that sometimes the most important thing was just being present with someone who needed comfort. Amara had loved the game because it made her feel useful during a time when the adults seemed overwhelmed and distant. Maya had shown her how to count the rhythm, how to hum softly, and how to stay calm even when everything around them felt uncertain. It had been their special connection during those final weeks, a way for a 5-year-old to contribute something meaningful to her grandmother's care. After school, Jamal walked Amara to the community center as promised. The building served multiple functions for their neighborhood: after-school programs for children, evening classes for adults, weekend community meetings, and a small food pantry that helped families stretch their resources. Mrs. Patterson, who ran the children's programs, greeted them with her usual warmth. "How was school today, sweetheart?" she asked Amara while Jamal signed in and gathered his basketball gear. "Good. I learned about empathy, it means understanding what other people need. Mrs. Patterson exchanged a look with Jamal, both of them recognizing the seriousness with which Amara approached such concepts. She was a child who absorbed life lessons deeply, turning them over in her mind until she found ways to apply them. "That's a beautiful thing to learn," Mrs. Patterson said, "and it's something you can practice every day." After Jamal left for practice, Amara settled into her usual spot near the large windows that overlooked the small park. She had homework to complete, but she also enjoyed watching the neighborhood activities from this vantage point. The community center felt safe and familiar, a place where she knew all the adults and where her presence was welcomed and noticed. Around 4 o'clock, Sister Agnes appeared for her afternoon routine with the pigeons. Amara watched through the window as the elderly woman settled onto her usual bench and began her patient distribution of breadcrumbs. Today, something seemed different about Sister Agnes's movements. They appeared more deliberate, perhaps more careful than usual. Mrs. Patterson approached with a cup of apple juice and a small plate of crackers. "Your mama called to check in. She'll be here right at 6 to pick you both up." "Mrs. Patterson, do you know Sister Agnes?" "I do. She's a wonderful woman. She used to volunteer here before her arthritis made it harder for her to be on her feet for long periods." "Why do you ask?" "I just think she's nice, the way she takes care of the birds." Mrs. Patterson settled into a nearby chair, recognizing that Amara was working through something in her mind. Sister Agnes has spent her whole life taking care of others. She raised her younger sister after their parents died, then became a teacher and later a nun. Some people just have that gift. They notice when others need help. Amara absorbed this information, adding it to her growing understanding of the woman she observed each day. Through the window, she could see Sister Agnes finishing her routine, carefully folding the empty paper bag and preparing to leave. But today, instead of her usual steady departure, Sister Agnes remained seated on the bench, one hand pressed against her chest. Something in Sister Agnes's posture changed, becoming tense and uncomfortable. Amara found herself standing closer to the window, a feeling of unease growing in her chest. The elderly woman's face had grown pale, and her breathing appeared labored. Sister Agnes reached into her purse with a shaking hand, and Amara watched as a small photograph fluttered to the ground. An old black-and-white picture that seemed precious from the careful way Sister Agnes usually handled her belongings. "Mrs. Patterson," Amara said quietly, not taking her eyes off the window, "I think something's wrong with Sister Agnes." Mrs. Patterson joined her at the window just as Sister Agnes doubled over, clearly in distress. Without hesitation, Mrs. Patterson reached for the phone to call for help, but Amara was already moving toward the door. "Amara, wait!" But the 7-year-old was following an instinct she didn't fully understand, driven by the same feeling that had made her pay attention to Sister Agnes's daily routines and the same deep empathy that made her notice when others needed care. As she pushed through the community center doors, the memory of her mother's magic breaths game came flooding back, not as a childhood memory, but as something urgent and necessary. The photograph that had fallen from Sister Agnes's purse lay on the ground beside the bench, a picture of 2 young women, one clearly recognizable as a much younger Sister Agnes. The other woman shared her features, and both wore expressions of hope and affection that spoke of dreams and possibilities. Later, Amara would learn that this was Sister Agnes's younger sister Margaret, who had died suddenly of a heart attack at age 26, decades before modern CPR training was widely available. But in this moment, Amara saw only a person in need, and she remembered exactly what her mother had taught her about helping someone breathe when everything seemed frightening and impossible. Sister Agnes clutched her chest with both hands now, her face contorted in pain and confusion. The pigeons scattered as she doubled over, but a few remained nearby, cooing softly as if sensing something was terribly wrong. Her medical alert bracelet caught the afternoon sunlight, a simple silver band that she wore faithfully, inscribed with emergency contact information and her heart condition details. Amara reached the bench just as Sister Agnes looked up with frightened eyes. "Child," she whispered, her voice barely audible, I think something's wrong with my heart." The words triggered something deep in Amara's memory. She had heard similar words 3 years ago, during the long nights when Nana Rose struggled to breathe. Maya had sat beside the hospital bed, explaining to 5-year-old Amara that sometimes hearts needed help, and that's why they practiced their special game. "It's okay," Amara said with surprising calm, settling beside Sister Agnes on the bench. "My mama taught me how to help with breathing. She called it magic breaths." Sister Agnes tried to speak, but the pain in her chest intensified. She felt a crushing weight, as if someone were standing on her ribs, and her left arm began to ache with a sharp, radiating pain. These were symptoms she recognized from her doctor's warnings about her heart condition, but experiencing them felt entirely different from reading about them in medical pamphlets. Amara placed her small hands gently on Sister Agnes's shoulders, just as Maya had shown her during those practice sessions 3 years ago. She began counting in her head, 1, 2, 3, while humming the soft melody her mother had used to help them both stay calm during Nana Rose's difficult moments. "You have to breathe with me," Amara said, her voice carrying the same soothing tone Maya had used. "In for 3, out for 3, like this." What Amara didn't realize was that Maya had been teaching her a simplified version of rescue breathing, disguised as a comforting game to help a grieving child feel useful. Maya's nursing school training, though incomplete, had included basic CPR certification, and she had adapted those techniques into something a 5-year-old could understand and practice without feeling overwhelmed by the medical implications. "Sister," Agnes focused on Amara's voice, using it as an anchor against the panic threatening to consume her. The child's hands remained steady on her shoulders, and there was something profoundly calming about Amara's presence. She had spent decades comforting others, students, parishioners, family members, but now found herself being cared for by someone who seemed to understand exactly what she needed. "That's good," Amara encouraged, continuing the rhythmic counting. "Just keep breathing with me. Help is coming." Inside the community center, Mrs. Patterson had called 911 and was now watching through the window in amazement. She could see Amara's focused concentration and the way Sister Agnes seemed to be stabilizing under the child's care. Something about the scene felt both miraculous and completely natural, as if Amara had been preparing for this moment her entire life. The meditation bracelet on Sister Agnes's wrist bore the engraving Margaret Rose O'Brien, 1947 to 1973, a memorial to the sister she had lost so many years ago. Margaret had been vibrant and full of life, planning to become a nurse before her sudden death from a massive heart attack. No one had known CPR then. No one had been able to help her in those crucial minutes before the ambulance arrived. Now, as Amara continued her gentle coaching, Sister Agnes felt an overwhelming sense of connection, not just to this remarkable child, but to the memory of Margaret and all the what-ifs that had shaped her life since that terrible day. The photograph that had fallen from her purse showed both sisters on Margaret's nursing school graduation day, their faces bright with hope and possibility. "You're doing really good," Amara said, noticing that Sister Agnes's breathing was becoming more regular. "My mama says that when people are scared, sometimes they just need someone to breathe with them." Sister Agnes managed a weak smile. Even through her pain, she recognized something extraordinary in this child's calm presence, Amara wasn't performing medical procedures she didn't understand. Instead, she was offering exactly what Sister Agnes needed most: steady companionship and gentle guidance through a frightening experience. The sound of sirens grew closer, and Amara felt a moment of uncertainty. She had been focused entirely on helping Sister Agnes breathe, but now she wondered if she should have done something different, something more. The doubt was brief but intense, the kind of self-questioning that would become familiar as she grew older and understood more about the weight of helping others. "Don't stop," Sister Agnes whispered, sensing Amara's hesitation. "You're helping me more than you know." When the paramedics arrived, they found Sister Agnes conscious and breathing steadily, with a 7-year-old girl maintaining gentle contact and speaking to her in soothing tones. The lead paramedic, a veteran named Robert Chen, immediately recognized signs of cardiac distress, but he was equally struck by the calmness of the scene. "I'm David," he said to Amara, kneeling beside the bench. "Can you tell me what happened?" Sister Agnes said her heart was hurting, Amara explained, not moving from her position. "So I helped her do the magic breaths my mama taught me." Magic breaths? For when people are scared and can't breathe right, you count to 3 and hum, and it helps them feel better. David exchanged a glance with his partner, Maria Santos. What this child described sounded remarkably similar to the breathing techniques they used to keep cardiac patients calm during transport. He began his assessment of Sister Agnes while allowing Amara to maintain her supportive presence. "Sister Agnes, can you tell me about the pain you're experiencing?" "Crushing," she managed. "Started about 10 minutes ago. This young lady has been keeping me calm." As David checked Sister Agnes's pulse and blood pressure, he noticed the medical alert bracelet and quickly read her information. Known cardiac condition, medications listed, emergency contacts provided. Everything suggested this was indeed a heart attack, but Sister Agnes's condition appeared stable thanks to the intervention she had received. "What you did was very helpful," David told Amara as Maria prepared the stretcher. "Keeping someone calm during a medical emergency is one of the most important things you can do." Mrs. Patterson arrived with Amara's backpack and a brief explanation of what she had witnessed from inside. David made notes about the timeline and Amara's actions, recognizing that this information might be valuable for the emergency room physicians. As they prepared to transport Sister Agnes to the hospital, she reached for Amara's hand. "Thank you, dear one. You have a very special gift." "Will you be okay?" Amara asked, her voice small for the first time since the emergency began. "I think I will, thanks to you." The ambulance departure left Amara standing beside the park bench, with Mrs. Patterson, feeling overwhelmed by everything that had just happened. The photograph still lay on the ground where it had fallen from Sister Agnes's purse, and Amara carefully picked it up, studying the faces of the 2 young women who looked so happy and hopeful. "We should keep this safe for her," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "I'm sure she'll want it back when she's feeling better." Maya arrived at the community center just as the ambulance disappeared around the corner, its lights flashing, but sirens silent, a good sign that suggested the emergency was under control. Mrs. Patterson quickly explained what had happened, and Maya felt a complex mix of emotions: pride in her daughter's compassion, concern about the situation Amara had faced, and a deep recognition of the techniques she had seen her daughter employ. "Mama," Amara said quietly as they walked to collect Jamal from basketball practice, "did I do the right thing?" Maya knelt down to meet her daughter's eyes, seeing in them a new awareness of life's fragility and complexity. "You did exactly the right thing, baby girl. You helped someone who needed it, and you stayed calm when it mattered most." But even as she offered comfort and reassurance, Maya understood that this afternoon had changed something fundamental for all of them. Amara had discovered she possessed both the instinct and the ability to help others in crisis, and there would be no going back to the innocent simplicity of childhood games and pretend scenarios. The evening ahead would bring phone calls to check on Sister Agnes, explanations to Jamal about what had happened, and Amara's first real understanding that the magic breaths her mother had taught her was something much more significant than a childhood coping mechanism. As they gathered Jamal and prepared to head home, Amara clutched Sister Agnes's photograph, carefully in her small hands, already understanding that some moments change everything, and that growing up sometimes happens in the space of a single afternoon. The next morning brought an unusual energy to their neighborhood. Word had spread quickly through the close-knit community about 7-year-old Amara's actions the previous afternoon. Mrs. Rodriguez from the corner market stopped Maya on her way to work with an unexpected embrace and tears in her eyes. "That little angel of yours," she said, squeezing Maya's hands. "My cousin Rosa works at the hospital. She heard about what happened with Sister Agnes. They're saying your Amara saved her life." Maya felt a flutter of pride mixed with concern. She had spent the evening explaining to both children what had really happened, helping them understand that the magic breaths game had been based on real medical techniques. The conversation had been delicate. She wanted Amara to understand the significance of her actions without feeling burdened by expectations she couldn't fulfill. At breakfast, Amara pushed her cereal around the bowl, clearly processing the events and the attention they had generated. Jamal, who had initially been amazed by his little sister's story, now watched her with protective concern. "People keep looking at me different," Amara said quietly. "Mrs. Rodriguez called me an angel, but I just did what you taught me, Mama. Sometimes when people do something helpful, others want to make it seem bigger than it was," Maya explained. "What you did was important, but it doesn't change who you are." The handwritten thank you note arrived with the morning mail, delivered by a nurse from St. Catherine's Hospital. Written on official hospital letterhead, it was signed by the entire emergency room staff who had cared for Sister Agnes. Maya read it aloud while Amara finished getting ready for school. "Dear Amara, thank you for your quick thinking and caring actions yesterday afternoon. Your calm presence and breathing techniques helped Sister Agnes remain stable until professional medical help arrived. You should be very proud of your compassion and courage." Amara listened to the note with mixed feelings. Part of her felt proud and validated, but another part felt overwhelmed by the formal recognition of something that had felt completely natural in the moment. At school, Ms. Williams had heard about the incident from other parents and approached the topic with careful sensitivity. During morning circle time, she guided a discussion about helping others without singling out Amara for uncomfortable attention. "Sometimes we have opportunities to help people in our community," she said. "Can anyone think of ways we might notice? When someone needs help," several children shared stories about helping elderly neighbors with groceries or finding lost pets, but Amara remained quiet. She appreciated Ms. Williams's gentle approach, but she was beginning to understand that what had happened with Sister Agnes was different from everyday helpfulness. During lunch, Amara's friend Jessica approached her with wide eyes. "My mom said, you saved someone's life yesterday. Is that true?" "I just helped her breathe better," Amara said, feeling uncomfortable with the dramatic language. "She was scared, and I knew a way to help people when they're scared. Could you teach me?" The question surprised Amara. She hadn't considered that others might want to learn what she knew, or that her mother's lessons could be shared. "I guess so. It's just breathing and counting and staying calm." When Maya picked up Amara that afternoon, she found her daughter surrounded by a small group of children, demonstrating the basic breathing pattern she had used with Sister Agnes. The scene was both heartwarming and concerning. Amara was clearly comfortable sharing what she knew, but Maya worried about children attempting to help in situations beyond their understanding. "We need to talk about when and how to help people," Maya said as they walked home. "What you did yesterday was right because you stayed calm and didn't try to do anything beyond what you knew. But it's important to always get adult help as soon as possible." "I know, Mama. Mrs. Patterson called 911 while I was helping Sister Agnes breathe. That evening, Maya made a decision that would change the trajectory of their family's future. After putting Amara to bed, she retrieved a box from her bedroom closet that had remained untouched for 3 years. Inside were her nursing school textbooks, class notes, and the hospital volunteer badge she had worn during her clinical rotations. The books felt familiar yet foreign in her hands: basic anatomy and physiology, fundamentals of nursing care, emergency medical procedures. She had loved these subjects, had excelled in her classes, and had been planning to specialize in pediatric nursing when Nana Rose's illness forced her to choose between her education and her family's immediate needs. Maya opened the CPR training manual to the section on rescue breathing techniques. The illustrations and instructions matched exactly what she remembered teaching Amara during those difficult weeks 3 years ago. She had adapted complex medical procedures into simple, age-appropriate actions that could help a child feel useful. During a time of crisis, seeing the connection between her formal training and her daughter's instinctive response filled Maya with a complex mix of emotions. She felt proud of how thoroughly Amara had absorbed and applied the lessons, but she also felt the sharp pang of her own deferred dreams and abandoned potential. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Dr. Patricia Williams, the cardiologist who had treated Sister Agnes, stopped by during her lunch break to meet the child whose actions had made such an impression on the hospital staff. Dr. Williams was an elegant woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of warm authority that immediately put patients at ease. She had grown up in a neighborhood similar to theirs and had worked hard to overcome barriers that might have prevented her from pursuing medicine. "I wanted to meet the young lady who helped our patient yesterday," she said. When Maya opened the door, "Sister Agnes has been telling everyone about Amara's kindness and skill." Amara hung back shyly until Dr. Williams knelt to her level and spoke directly to her. "Sister Agnes told me you helped her with special breathing when she was frightened. That was exactly the right thing to do. My mama taught me how," Amara said. "She said sometimes people just need someone to breathe with them when things are scary." Dr. Williams looked at Maya with new understanding. "You have medical training?" "Some nursing school years ago," Maya said carefully. "I had to leave to care for my mother." The techniques Amara used were remarkably sophisticated for a child her age. Someone taught her well. As Dr. Williams prepared to leave, she handed Amara a small gift, a child-sized stethoscope, real but designed for educational purposes. "This is for listening to heartbeats," she explained. "Would you like to hear yours?" Amara's eyes widened as Dr. Williams showed her how to position the stethoscope and listen to the steady rhythm of her own heart. The sound was both fascinating and reassuring, a reminder of the life force that animated everything around her. "Hearts are amazing," Dr. Williams said. "They work hard every day to keep us healthy, and sometimes they need a little help. People like you and your mother understand how to provide that help." After Dr. Williams left, Amara spent the afternoon listening to heartbeats, her own, Jamal's when he returned from school, even attempting to detect the heartbeat of Mrs. Rodriguez's cat through the window. The stethoscope represented something new in her understanding of herself and her capabilities. That evening, as Maya tucked her into bed, Amara asked the question that had been forming in her mind all day. "Mama, could I learn more about helping people like Sister Agnes?" Maya looked down at her daughter's earnest face, seeing in it the same curiosity and compassion that had first drawn her to nursing. "Would you like to?" "I think so. But I want to understand it better, not just know it like a game." Maya made a decision that night that would reshape their family's future. If Amara was going to carry this knowledge and these instincts, she deserved to understand them properly. And perhaps, in teaching her daughter, Maya might find a way back to the dreams she had set aside, but never truly abandoned. The dusty box of nursing textbooks emerged from Maya's closet like artifacts from a previous life. She spread them across the kitchen table after dinner, their worn covers and highlighted pages, telling the story of dreams interrupted, but not forgotten. Amara traced the diagrams with her finger, fascinated by the illustrations of hearts and lungs and the intricate systems that kept people alive. "This book shows how blood moves through your body," Maya explained, opening to a chapter she had once memorized for exams. "And this one explains how breathing works and why the magic breaths we practiced were so important for Sister Agnes." Jamal joined them at the table, initially skeptical but gradually drawn into the discussion. "You really learned all this stuff, Mama?" "I was 2 semesters away from graduating when Nana Rose got sick," Maya said, her voice carrying old sadness. "I always planned to go back someday." Amara absorbed this information with the serious consideration she brought to all important revelations. "Could you go back now?" "It's complicated, baby girl. School costs money, and I need to work to take care of you and Jamal." But even as she spoke, Maya felt something stirring, a remembered passion for learning, for understanding how the human body worked and how medical knowledge could help people in their most vulnerable moments. Watching Amara's eager attention to the textbook diagrams reminded her why she had loved nursing school, why she had felt called to help others heal. 3 days later, Sister Agnes returned home from the hospital with a new understanding of her own mortality and a deep gratitude for the child who had helped save her life. Her first stop was the community center, where she found Amara doing homework at her usual table by the window. "I have something that belongs to you," Amara said immediately, carefully retrieving the photograph from her backpack. "It fell when you were sick." Sister Agnes accepted the picture with trembling hands, looking down at the image of herself and Margaret from so many years ago. "This is my sister," she said softly. "She wanted to be a nurse, just like your mother did." "What happened to her?" "She died young, from a heart attack like the one I had. But back then people didn't know how to help the way you helped me." Amara studied the photograph, seeing the resemblance between the sisters and the hope in their young faces. "Do you think she would be happy that you're okay?" "I think she would be very proud of you," Sister Agnes said. "And I think she would want me to make sure you understand how special your gift is." Over the following weeks, Sister Agnes became a regular presence in Amara's after-school routine. She would arrive at the community center around 4 o'clock. Not to feed pigeons, but to spend time with the girl who had saved her life. Their conversations ranged from simple topics about school and family to deeper discussions about calling and purpose. "Some people are born with a natural understanding of how to help others," Sister Agnes explained one afternoon. "It's not just about knowing medical procedures. It's about staying calm when others are frightened, about knowing instinctively what people need." "But I don't know very much," Amara protested. "I just did what Mama taught me. Your mother taught you the techniques, but you provided something more important: presence and compassion. Those can't be taught from books." Meanwhile, Maya had begun researching pathways back to nursing school. She discovered evening and weekend programs designed for working parents, scholarship opportunities for single mothers, and hospitals that offered tuition assistance in exchange for employment commitments. For the first time in 3 years, she allowed herself to imagine completing her education. Dr. Williams had left her business card with Maya, along with an invitation to call if she ever wanted to discuss returning to healthcare. The conversation that followed opened doors Maya hadn't known still existed. "We have a program for people in exactly your situation," Dr. Williams explained during their phone call. "Single parents who had to interrupt their education for family reasons. There's financial assistance available, and we work with students to create flexible schedules." I'd have to start over. "Not entirely. Many of your previous credits would transfer, and your life experience would actually be valuable in your clinical work. Plus, you clearly have a gift for teaching medical concepts. What you did with Amara was remarkable." That evening, Maya spread nursing program applications across the kitchen table alongside her old textbooks. Amara watched with keen interest as her mother filled out forms and calculated credit requirements and tuition costs. "Would you be happy if I went back to school?" Maya asked. "Would you be happy?" Amara countered, displaying the perceptive questioning that often surprised adults. "I think I would. I loved learning about how to help people get better." "Then yes, I'd be happy." Jamal's response was more complicated. At 15, he understood the financial implications of his mother returning to school, the potential changes to their routine, and the additional responsibilities he might need to assume. But he also recognized the light in Maya's eyes when she talked about nursing, a brightness that had been absent for too long. "If it's what you want, Mama, we'll make it work," he said with the maturity that life had forced upon him. The community center began organizing informal first aid classes in response to growing interest sparked by Amara's story. Mrs. Patterson had fielded numerous calls from parents asking about basic emergency training for their children, and she recognized an opportunity to provide valuable education while honoring what had happened with Sister Agnes. Maya found herself volunteering to help with the classes, initially as an assistant, but gradually taking on more teaching responsibilities. As her knowledge and natural ability became apparent, she discovered that explaining medical concepts to children and worried parents felt natural and fulfilling in ways her current jobs never did. Amara attended these classes not as the child whose story had inspired them, but as an eager student, learning alongside her neighbors. She practiced proper hand placement for chest compressions on the training mannequins, learned to recognize signs of choking, and absorbed information about when to call for help versus when to act independently. "The most important thing," Maya taught the group, "is staying calm and thinking clearly. Panic doesn't help anyone." Watching her mother teach, Amara felt a deep sense of rightness about the direction their lives were taking. Maya's confidence grew with each class, her natural teaching ability emerging as she helped adults and children understand basic emergency response. The enthusiasm Maya brought to these sessions reminded everyone why she had been drawn to nursing in the first place. Dr. Williams attended one of the community classes and was impressed by both Maya's teaching skills and the quality of information being shared. Afterwards, she approached Maya with a proposal. "I'd like you to consider applying for our accelerated nursing program," she said. "It's designed for people with your background and experience, and I think there might be a place for you at the hospital, helping develop community education programs." "I haven't even been accepted to school yet," Maya protested. "Sometimes opportunities align in unexpected ways. Your daughter's actions opened a door, but your own capabilities are what will carry you through it." That night, Amara overheard her mother on the phone with her sister in Atlanta discussing the possibility of returning to school. Maya's voice carried excitement tempered by practical concerns about money, childcare, and time management. "I know. It sounds crazy, Rita, but I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing." Watching Amara that day, seeing how naturally she responded, it reminded me why I wanted to be a nurse in the first place. Amara fell asleep, listening to her mother's hopeful voice, understanding that their family was approaching a turning point that would require courage from all of them. The simple act of helping Sister Agnes breathe had set in motion changes none of them could have anticipated. The next morning brought acceptance letters from 2 nursing programs and a conditional job offer from St. Catherine's Hospital. Maya stared at the letters for a long time, hardly believing that doors she had thought permanently closed were opening again. "What does conditional mean?" Amara asked, reading over her mother's shoulder. "It means they want to hire me, but only after I finish school and get my nursing license. So they're promising you a job. They're promising me a chance." Sister Agnes arrived that afternoon with a small wrapped package for Amara. Inside was a silver chain with a small medical alert pendant, engraved with the words, "Young Healer," and the date of their encounter in the park. "This is to remind you that helping others is both a gift and a responsibility," Sister Agnes explained. "Wear it when you're ready to accept both." Amara fastened the chain around her neck, feeling the weight of the pendant against her chest. It was beautiful but also serious, a symbol of expectations and possibilities that both excited and intimidated her. "Am I ready now?" she asked. "That's something only you can decide," Sister Agnes replied. "But I believe you're already more ready than most people twice your age." As the sun set over their neighborhood, Amara stood at the community center window watching Sister Agnes's evening routine with the pigeons. The scene looked the same as it had weeks ago, but everything had changed. Maya would begin nursing school in the fall. Amara would continue learning about emergency medicine, and their family would embark on a journey toward dreams they had almost forgotten were possible. The pendant felt warm against Amara's skin, a tangible reminder that sometimes the smallest actions create the largest ripples. And that courage often begins with simply paying attention to the people around us who need our help. 3 months later, the rhythm of their lives had shifted in ways both subtle and profound. Maya attended evening nursing classes 2 nights a week and weekend clinical rotations, while Amara continued her informal medical education with Dr. Williams, who had taken a special interest in nurturing the child's natural abilities. Every Tuesday after school, Amara would meet Dr. Williams at the hospital's Community Education Center, where she learned about the human body through age-appropriate demonstrations and hands-on activities. The stethoscope Dr. Williams had given her had become Amara's most treasured possession, accompanying her everywhere as she practiced listening to heartbeats and understanding the rhythm of life within her family and friends. "Hearts tell stories," Dr. Williams explained during one of their sessions. "A fast heartbeat might mean someone is excited or scared. A slow, steady heartbeat usually means someone is calm and healthy. Learning to listen helps you understand what people need." Amara absorbed these lessons with the focused attention she brought to everything that mattered to her. She had developed an uncanny ability to notice when people around her weren't feeling well. Mrs. Chen's slightly labored breathing when she climbed stairs, the way Mr. Washington held his chest when he thought no one was looking, the pale complexion that sometimes appeared on Maya's face after long days of work and school. This heightened awareness was both a gift and a burden. Amara found herself constantly monitoring the health and well-being of everyone in her orbit, sometimes staying awake at night, worried about signs she might have missed or problems she couldn't solve. Maya noticed her daughter's growing tension and brought it up during one of their evening conversations. "Baby girl, you seem worried about everyone lately. That's a lot of responsibility for someone your age." "But what if I see something wrong and don't help?" Amara asked. "What if someone needs me and I'm not paying attention?" Caring about others is beautiful, but you can't take care of everyone all the time. Even doctors and nurses have limits on what they can do. Maya's nursing school experience was challenging but exhilarating. She had forgotten how much she loved, learning about pathophysiology and patient care. How satisfying it felt to understand the complex systems that maintained human life. Her classmates, mostly younger than her, initially seemed intimidated by her life experience, but they quickly recognized her natural competence and began seeking her help with difficult concepts. The financial strain of school was significant despite the scholarships and assistance programs. Maya had reduced her working hours to accommodate classes and study time, which meant careful budgeting and occasional assistance from the community support network that had rallied around their family. Mrs. Rodriguez often sent extra groceries home with Amara, and Sister Agnes had quietly arranged for small financial gifts through her church connections. Jamal had stepped up magnificently, taking on more household responsibilities and helping Amara with homework while Maya attended classes. His maturity impressed everyone who knew their family, but Maya worried about the additional pressure on her 15-year-old son. "I don't mind helping," Jamal insisted when Maya tried to discuss her concerns. "Amara's not much trouble, and I like knowing I'm helping you get through school." "You shouldn't have to grow up so fast. None of us should have to, but we do what we need to do for family." Dr. Williams had begun bringing Amara to observe certain pediatric procedures, always with proper permissions and careful attention to patient privacy. Amara watched with fascination as Dr. Williams examined children with heart conditions, explained treatment options to worried parents, and provided the kind of calm reassurance that helped families navigate medical crises. "Someday," Dr. Williams said after one particularly successful procedure, "you might want to consider becoming a doctor yourself." "Could I really do that?" Amara asked. "With your natural instincts and the right education, I think you could do anything you set your mind to." The suggestion planted a seed in Amara's imagination. She began to envision herself in medical settings, helping children and families the way Dr. Williams did, using both technical knowledge and compassionate presence to make frightening situations more manageable. At the community center, Amara had become something of a celebrity among the younger children, who sought her out for minor injuries and complaints. She had learned to assess when situations required adult intervention versus when simple comfort and basic first aid was sufficient. "Amara fixed my scraped knee," 6-year-old Marcus announced to Mrs. Patterson one afternoon. "She cleaned it and put a Band-Aid on it and told me it would heal faster if I didn't pick at it." Mrs. Patterson watched Amara's careful attention to the children around her with a mixture of admiration and concern. The 7-year-old was developing remarkable skills, but she was also shouldering emotional burdens that might be inappropriate for someone her age. "How are you feeling about all the attention and responsibility?" Mrs. Patterson asked Amara during a quiet moment. "Sometimes it's hard," Amara admitted. "People expect me to know what to do, but I don't always know. What if I make a mistake?" "Making mistakes is how we learn. The important thing is that you care enough to try to help." Mrs. Chen, their elderly neighbor, had been experiencing minor health issues that provided Amara with opportunities to practice her observational skills. During one of their regular conversations, Amara noticed that Mrs. Chen seemed more tired than usual and was rubbing her left arm frequently. "Mrs. Chen, does your arm hurt?" Amara asked, with the directness that characterized her approach to health concerns. "Just a little stiffness, dear. It happens when you get old." But Amara remembered Dr. Williams's lessons about heart attack symptoms in women, which often presented differently than the dramatic chest pain that Sister Agnes had experienced. Left arm pain, especially combined with fatigue, could be a warning sign that required medical attention. "I think you should call your doctor," Amara said seriously. "Arm pain and being tired could mean your heart needs to be checked." Mrs. Chen initially dismissed the concern, but Amara's earnest insistence eventually convinced her to make an appointment. The resulting examination revealed early signs of cardiac issues that, when addressed promptly, prevented a more serious emergency. "That child probably saved my life," Mrs. Chen told Maya. "If she hadn't insisted I see the doctor, I might have ignored the symptoms until it was too late." Maya felt proud of Amara's perceptiveness, but also concerned about the pattern that was emerging. Her 7-year-old daughter was developing into a remarkably skilled observer of human health, but the emotional weight of that responsibility was beginning to show in Amara's increasingly serious demeanor and occasional worry-filled nights. "We need to talk about balance," Maya told Dr. Williams during their next conversation. "Amara is learning so much, but she's also taking on more emotional responsibility than I think is healthy for a child her age." "You're right to be concerned." Dr. Williams agreed. "Perhaps it's time to help her understand the difference between being observant and being responsible for outcomes." As autumn approached, bringing with it Maya's first clinical rotations and Amara's growing reputation as the neighborhood's young medical advisor, their family faced new challenges in managing the opportunities and expectations that had grown from a single moment of childhood compassion. The question was no longer whether Amara had a gift for helping others, but how to nurture that gift without allowing it to overshadow her childhood or burden her with unrealistic expectations. Sister Agnes arrived at the community center one crisp October afternoon, carrying a small leather-bound journal and wearing the gentle smile that had become familiar to everyone in their neighborhood. She found Amara at her usual table, reviewing homework while keeping one eye on the children playing nearby. "I have something I think might help you," Sister Agnes said, settling into the chair beside Amara. "When I was your age and started feeling responsible for everyone around me, my teacher gave me this." She placed the journal on the table. Its brown leather cover worn smooth by decades of handling. The pages inside were lined but blank, waiting for thoughts and observations to fill them. "She told me that sometimes our minds get so full of worries about others that we need a safe place to put those thoughts," Sister Agnes continued. "Writing can help us understand our feelings and figure out the difference between helping and worrying." Amara ran her fingers over the journal's cover, intrigued by the idea of having a private place for her increasingly complex thoughts about medicine, responsibility, and the growing expectations that surrounded her daily life. "What would I write about? Anything that feels important to you. Questions about what you've learned, worries about people you care about, even happy thoughts about helping someone feel better. Writing things down sometimes helps us see them more clearly." That evening, Amara made her first journal entry, carefully, writing in her neat second-grade handwriting about Mrs. Chen's doctor visit and her relief that the early intervention had prevented a more serious problem. She wrote about her excitement when Dr. Williams explained new medical concepts, but also about the scary feeling of thinking she might miss something important about someone's health. Maya's clinical rotations had begun, requiring her to spend long shifts at the hospital learning hands-on patient care under the supervision of experienced nurses. The work was exhausting but deeply satisfying, confirming her passion for nursing and reminding her why she had chosen this profession years ago. Her supervising nurse, Margaret Torres, had 30 years of experience and immediately recognized Maya's natural competence. "You have good instincts," she told Maya after observing her interact with a frightened pediatric patient. "Where did you say you worked before?" "I haven't worked in healthcare before. I started nursing school right after high school, but had to leave to care for my mother." "Well, you don't act like someone new to this. You have the kind of calm presence that puts patients at ease." Maya's success in her clinical work created new confidence, but it also intensified the financial and logistical challenges facing their family. Her reduced work schedule meant tight budgets and careful planning for basic necessities. Jamal had taken on a part-time job stocking shelves at Mrs. Rodriguez's market, contributing to household expenses while maintaining his grades and basketball commitments. "I can handle more hours," Jamal insisted when Maya expressed concern about his increased responsibilities. "And Mrs. Rodriguez pays me fair, plus she sends us home with extra food sometimes." The community support network continued to provide assistance, but Maya struggled with accepting help from neighbors who had their own financial challenges. Sister Agnes had quietly organized a small fund through her church connections, and Dr. Williams had helped Maya apply for additional scholarships. But pride sometimes made it difficult for Maya to accept the generosity offered. Amara's journal. Writing had become a nightly routine, helping her process the increasingly complex emotions that came with her growing medical knowledge. She wrote about the children at the community center who sought her help with minor injuries, about her worry that she might give someone wrong advice, and about her dreams of someday becoming a doctor like Dr. Williams. One entry read, "Today, Marcus fell off the monkey bars and his wrist looked funny. I told Mrs. Patterson right away, instead of trying to fix it myself, because I remembered Mama saying some things need grown-up help. Marcus had to go to the hospital for x-rays, but he's okay. I felt proud that I knew when to get help instead of trying to do everything myself." Dr. Williams had begun introducing Amara to more advanced concepts, always careful to frame them as educational rather than practical training. They studied basic anatomy using child-friendly models, learned about different medical specialties, and discussed the ethical responsibilities that came with medical knowledge. "Understanding how to help people is just the beginning," Dr. Williams explained during one of their sessions. "We also have to understand our limits and know when to step back and let others take over. But what if there's no one else around to help? Then you do what you can while getting professional help as quickly as possible, just like you did with Sister Agnes." The question of limits had become increasingly relevant as Amara's reputation spread beyond their immediate neighborhood. Parents from surrounding areas began seeking her out, sometimes with unrealistic expectations about what a 7-year-old could or should be asked to evaluate. Maya intervened when a woman from across town brought her feverish toddler to the community, sent her specifically asking for the little girl who knows about medical things. The situation highlighted the need for clearer boundaries around Amara's involvement in other people's health concerns. "People are starting to treat you like a doctor," Maya explained to Amara that evening. "But you're still a child, and it's not fair for adults to put that kind of responsibility on you. But what if I can help? Helping is good, but adults need to make their own decisions about medical care. You can share what you've learned, but you can't be responsible for what happens next." Sister Agnes helped reinforce these boundaries by sharing stories from her own experience with overwhelming expectations. "When I was young, people in my parish started coming to me with all their problems because they thought I had special wisdom," she told Amara. "I had to learn that caring about people doesn't mean fixing everything for them." The journal became Amara's tool for working through these complex lessons. She wrote about the difference between noticing health problems and being responsible for solving them, about the good feeling of helping someone combined with the worry about making mistakes. Maya's progress through nursing school accelerated as her natural abilities and life experience combined with formal education. Her instructors consistently praised her clinical performance, and she began to believe that graduation and professional success were genuinely achievable goals rather than distant dreams. "I got an A on my pathophysiology exam," she announced. At dinner one evening, her face bright with accomplishment. "What's pathophysiology?" Amara asked. "It's the study of how diseases affect the body and how to treat them, like learning why Sister Agnes's heart got sick and how the doctors made it better." "Exactly like that." As winter approached, their family had found a rhythm that balanced Maya's education, Amara's growing medical interests, and Jamal's increasing maturity. The challenges were significant: financial stress, time management, and the emotional complexity of Amara's unique situation. But they were facing them together with the support of a community that had invested in their success. Amara's final journal entry of the month reflected her growing understanding of her place in the world. "I like knowing how to help people, but I also like being 7 and playing with my friends. Sister Agnes says I can be both helpful and still be a kid. I think she's right." The letter arrived on a grey February morning, its official university letterhead immediately recognizable to Maya as she sorted through the mail before leaving for her clinical rotation. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the envelope, expecting confirmation of her application to the advanced nursing program she had been working toward. Instead, she found a formal rejection notice that felt like a physical blow to her chest. "After careful review of your academic record and current performance, we regret to inform you that your application for admission to our Bachelor of Science in Nursing program has been denied. Your previous academic probation and extended absence from formal education raise concerns about your ability to successfully complete our rigorous curriculum." Maya read the letter 3 times, each reading making the words more devastating. She had maintained excellent grades in her prerequisite courses, received glowing recommendations from her clinical supervisors, and scored well on all required assessments. The rejection seemed to ignore everything she had accomplished in favor of focusing on circumstances from nearly a decade ago. A second letter from St. Catherine's Hospital delivered an equally crushing blow. The conditional job offer that had provided hope and motivation throughout her studies was being withdrawn due to concerns about candidate qualifications and recent institutional policy changes regarding hiring requirements. Maya sat at the kitchen table, staring at both letters, feeling as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. All the sacrifice, the late-night studying while working multiple jobs, the careful budgeting and community support, it all seemed suddenly pointless in the face of institutional barriers she hadn't fully understood. Amara found her mother there, an hour later, still holding the letters and staring out the window with the kind of blank expression that indicated deep shock. "Mama, what's wrong?" Maya struggled to explain the situation in terms an 8-year-old could understand. "Sometimes, schools and hospitals make decisions that don't seem fair. They said I can't continue with nursing school or get the job I was promised. But you're the best student in your class. Mrs. Torres said so. Sometimes being the best isn't enough if other people have already decided what they think about you." The conversation that followed was difficult and painful. Amara had watched her mother's confidence grow throughout the nursing program, had seen the light in Maya's eyes when she talked about patient care and medical procedures. The idea that someone could simply take that away seemed incomprehensible and deeply unjust. Jamal's reaction was more complex, mixing disappointment with practical concern about their family's financial future. Maya's reduced work schedule had been sustainable only because of the promise of better employment after graduation. Without that prospect, they faced potential eviction and the collapse of the stability they had worked so hard to build. "Maybe you could apply to different schools," Jamal suggested with the optimism of youth. "Baby, these decisions don't happen in isolation. When one program rejects you for these reasons, others usually follow the same pattern." Maya's depression deepened over the following days as the reality of the situation settled in. She had to withdraw from her current classes, losing the tuition money they had struggled to pay. Her clinical supervisor, Margaret Torres, was outraged by the decision and offered to advocate on Maya's behalf. But institutional policies were notoriously difficult to challenge. The community response was swift and indignant. Sister Agnes had experienced enough discrimination in her decades of church work to recognize systemic bias when she saw it. Mrs. Chen rallied the neighborhood with the fierce determination of someone who had fought for justice in her own life. Even Dr. Williams was appalled by the hospital's decision, understanding immediately that Maya had been rejected not for lack of competence, but for reasons that had nothing to do with her abilities. "This is wrong," Dr. Williams told Maya during a meeting she had requested specifically to address the situation. "I've observed your clinical work, and you're more skilled than nurses with years of experience. Someone needs to be held accountable for these decisions." But Maya had sunk into a despair that made advocacy feel pointless. "Maybe they're right," she said quietly. "Maybe I was fooling myself thinking I could really do this." "Don't you dare let them make you doubt yourself," Dr. Williams responded sharply. "This is about their limitations, not yours." Amara struggled to understand how institutions that were supposed to help people could make decisions that seemed so obviously wrong. She wrote extensively in her journal about the unfairness of the situation, trying to process complex emotions about justice, discrimination, and the gap between merit and opportunity. One journal entry read, "I don't understand why people would stop Mama from becoming a nurse when she's so good at helping people. She taught me how to save Sister Agnes, and she helps all the patients love her in clinical. It feels like someone is being mean on purpose." Sister Agnes revealed during this difficult period that her own path to religious life had been shaped by similar institutional barriers. "When I was young, I wanted to become a doctor like my sister Margaret planned to be, but women weren't encouraged in medical school then, especially women from families like ours. I became a nun, partly because it was one of the few ways I could dedicate my life to helping others." The revelation provided context for Sister Agnes's fierce advocacy on Maya's behalf. She had spent decades watching talented people, particularly women and minorities, be excluded from opportunities they deserved. Maya's situation awakened memories of her own deferred dreams and Margaret's lost potential. "Margaret would have been an excellent nurse," Sister Agnes told Amara during one of their conversations. "She had the same instincts your mother has, the same natural ability to comfort people when they're scared. Losing her was tragedy enough. Seeing institutions prevent people like your mother from fulfilling similar callings feels like a continuation of that loss." Dr. Williams began investigating the decision-making process that had led to Maya's rejections, using her professional connections to understand whether bias had played a role. What she discovered was a pattern of subtle discrimination, not overt enough to be easily challenged, but consistent enough to suggest systematic exclusion of candidates like Maya. The nursing program's admission committee had been influenced by concerns about cultural fit and traditional academic preparation, coded language that often served to exclude students from non-traditional backgrounds. The hospital's policy changes had been implemented specifically to reduce hiring of nurses from community college programs, favoring candidates from more prestigious four-year universities. This is institutional racism disguised as academic standards. Dr. Williams explained to the small group of advocates who had gathered to support Maya, "It's legal, but it's wrong." Mrs. Chen organized petition drives, while Sister Agnes worked through church networks to build broader community support. Local media became interested in the story, particularly the dramatic contrast between Maya's obvious competence and the institutional barriers preventing her advancement. But Maya remained trapped in despair, unable to believe that fighting back would accomplish anything beyond prolonging the disappointment. She returned to full-time work at her previous jobs, trying to rebuild financial stability while grieving the loss of dreams that had felt within reach. Amara watched her mother's defeat with growing determination. She had learned from Dr. Williams that healing sometimes required fighting against systems that caused harm. If institutions could prevent good people from helping others, then someone needed to challenge those institutions. "Mama," she said one evening as Maya prepared for another shift cleaning offices, "remember when you told me that helping people sometimes means standing up to things that aren't right?" "I remember. I think you need to let people stand up for you now." The 8-year-old's words carried weight that surprised Maya. She looked at her daughter, this remarkable child who had saved Sister Agnes, who had inspired an entire community education program, who had inadvertently set in motion Maya's return to nursing, and realized that giving up would betray not just her own dreams, but the example she wanted to set. "You think I should keep fighting?" "I think Sister Agnes and Dr. Williams and Mrs. Chen are fighting for you because they know you're supposed to be a nurse. Maybe you should listen to them." That conversation marked the beginning of Maya's emergence from despair and her decision to join the advocacy campaign that was building around her case. The fight ahead would be difficult and uncertain, but it would be grounded in community, support, and the understanding that individual dreams were connected to larger questions of justice and opportunity. The petition that emerged from Sister Agnes and Mrs. Chen's organizing efforts grew beyond anything their small neighborhood had ever attempted. What began as a simple letter-writing campaign evolved into a comprehensive advocacy movement that attracted support from across the city and beyond. Maya initially resisted the attention, uncomfortable with the idea of her personal struggles becoming a public cause. But as community members shared their own stories of educational barriers and workplace discrimination, she began to understand that her situation represented larger systemic issues that affected many families. "This isn't just about you anymore," Sister Agnes explained during one of their planning meetings. "This is about whether institutions can exclude qualified people based on outdated biases and whether communities have the power to demand better." Dr. Williams had been conducting her own investigation into the university's admission practices and the hospital's hiring policies. What she discovered was troubling, but not surprising. A pattern of decisions that disproportionately affected students and employees from backgrounds similar to Maya's. "I've reviewed 5 years of admission records," she reported to the advocacy group that had formed around Maya's case. "Students with Maya's qualifications and clinical performance have a 90% acceptance rate when they come from traditional 4-year university programs. Students from community college backgrounds with identical qualifications have a 30% acceptance rate." The data provided concrete evidence of bias, but challenging institutional policies required legal expertise that the community couldn't afford. That's when Dr. Williams reached out to her medical school classmate, who had become a civil rights attorney and who agreed to review Maya's case pro bono. Maya's own role in the advocacy campaign grew gradually as her confidence returned. She began attending community meetings where neighbors shared stories about educational and employment barriers their families had faced. The conversations were difficult but illuminating, helping Maya understand that her individual disappointment was connected to broader patterns of exclusion. Amara observed these developments with fascination and growing understanding. She wrote extensively in her journal about the difference between individual problems and systemic issues, processing concepts that were sophisticated for an 8-year-old but natural extensions of her developing sense of justice. "I think some people make rules that aren't fair on purpose," she wrote. "Not because they're mean, but because they don't understand how it feels to be left out. Maybe they need someone to explain it to them." The local media attention intensified when a television news crew interviewed Maya at the community center, with Sister Agnes and Dr. Williams providing context about institutional barriers in healthcare education. The story aired during the evening news with the headline, "Qualified Nurse Denied Opportunity, Community Rallies for Justice." Maya was nervous during the interview, but spoke clearly about her experience and her passion for nursing. "I'm not asking for special treatment," she said. "I'm asking for fair evaluation based on my abilities and performance, not assumptions about my background." The response to the news story was immediate and overwhelming. The nursing school received hundreds of calls and emails from community members, healthcare professionals, and advocacy organizations. The hospital faced similar pressure, with several prominent physicians threatening to reconsider their affiliations if discriminatory hiring practices continued. But the most significant development came when Mrs. Chen suffered another cardiac episode during one of the advocacy meetings, creating an urgent situation that would test everything Maya and Amara had learned about emergency response and community solidarity. The meeting was taking place at the community center on a Thursday evening, with about 30 people gathered to discuss next steps in the campaign. Mrs. Chen had been speaking passionately about her own experiences with discrimination when she suddenly stopped mid-sentence, clutching her chest with a look of confusion and fear. Maya's nursing training kicked in immediately. She moved quickly to Mrs. Chen's side while instructing someone to call 911, her clinical skills evident to everyone in the room. She checked Mrs. Chen's pulse, monitored her breathing, and began the systematic assessment she had learned during her brief time in the nursing program. Amara appeared at Maya's side without being asked, carrying the first aid kit from the community center and positioning herself to assist. The 8-year-old's calm presence and obvious competence impressed the adults who witnessed her actions. "Mrs. Chen, can you describe the pain you're feeling?" Maya asked, her voice professional and reassuring. "Crushing. Like before," Mrs. Chen managed, "but worse this time." Maya recognized signs of a significant cardiac event and began coordinating care while waiting for paramedics to arrive. She elevated Mrs. Chen's legs, loosened her clothing, and maintained continuous monitoring of her vital signs. Throughout the emergency, she explained her actions to the gathered community members, inadvertently demonstrating the clinical competence that institutions had refused to recognize. "This is exactly what nurses do," Dr. Williams murmured to Sister Agnes as they watched Maya work. "She's providing textbook emergency cardiac care." Amara assisted by retrieving supplies, timing intervals, and helping keep Mrs. Chen calm through gentle conversation. Her actions were supportive rather than independent, showing that she had learned important lessons about appropriate roles and boundaries. When paramedics arrived, Maya provided a comprehensive report about Mrs. Chen's condition, treatment provided, and relevant medical history. The lead paramedic, who had treated Sister Agnes months earlier, immediately recognized Maya's competence. "Are you a nurse?" he asked. "Nursing student," Maya replied. "Well, former nursing student." "Former? With skills like these?" Dr. Williams stepped forward to explain the situation, and the paramedic's expression shifted from professional interest to obvious indignation. "You mean they denied admission to someone with this level of clinical ability?" The ambulance transport to the hospital created an opportunity for Maya to continue demonstrating her skills. Dr. Williams arranged for her to accompany Mrs. Chen, and her performance during the emergency room intake further impressed the medical staff who witnessed it. "Who trained her?" asked the attending physician after Maya had helped transfer Mrs. Chen to the cardiac unit. "She trained herself mostly," Dr. Williams replied. "With some guidance from community college courses and clinical rotations, she's no longer allowed to complete." The physician shook his head in disbelief. "That's criminal negligence on the part of whoever denied her admission. She has better instincts than half my residents. Word of Maya's performance during Mrs. Chen's emergency spread quickly through both the hospital and the broader community. The timing was particularly significant because it occurred just days before the formal review of her nursing school application that the advocacy campaign had finally secured. The review hearing had been scheduled for the following week, with representatives from the nursing school, the hospital, and various community advocacy groups planning to present evidence about Maya's qualifications and the decision-making process that had excluded her. Maya's handling of Mrs. Chen's cardiac emergency provided fresh evidence of her clinical competence, but it also highlighted the human cost of institutional barriers. Mrs. Chen had received exceptional emergency care from someone the healthcare system refused to recognize as qualified. "Tomorrow, they'll decide whether I'm good enough to be a nurse," Maya said to Amara as they sat in the hospital waiting room while Mrs. Chen underwent cardiac surgery. "Tonight I helped save a woman's life using skills they say I don't possess." "Maybe they just needed to see you do it," Amara suggested, with the straightforward logic that often cut through adult complexity. Sister Agnes joined them in the waiting room, carrying coffee and the weight of decades spent fighting institutional injustice. "Whatever happens in that hearing," she said, "this community knows who you are and what you're capable of. That knowledge won't disappear regardless of what officials decide." Dr. Williams arrived with news that Mrs. Chen's surgery had been successful and that the cardiac surgeon had specifically praised the quality of pre-hospital care she had received. "He said the emergency response was flawless," Dr. Williams reported. "Maya's assessment and treatment probably prevented significant additional cardiac damage." The following morning brought unexpected visitors to their apartment. A delegation from the nursing school, including the dean and 2 admission committee members, appeared at Maya's door with expressions that suggested serious reconsideration of previous decisions. "We've been reviewing your case in light of recent events," the dean explained. "Your performance last night, combined with a broader examination of our admission practices, has raised questions about the fairness of our original decision." Maya felt cautious hope mixed with protective skepticism. She had been disappointed too recently to trust institutional promises without concrete evidence of change. "What kind of questions?" she asked. "Questions about whether our evaluation criteria adequately assess clinical competence and whether we've been inadvertently creating barriers for qualified candidates from non-traditional backgrounds." The conversation that followed was careful and formal, with the nursing school representatives acknowledging that Maya's rejection had been based on outdated policies rather than accurate assessment of her abilities. They offered immediate reinstatement to the program, with apologies for the disruption to her education. But Maya had learned important lessons about institutional power and community solidarity during the months of advocacy. "I appreciate the offer," she said, "but I need to understand what's changed beyond my individual situation. Are you committed to reviewing policies that affect other students like me?" The dean's response suggested genuine institutional reflection. "Your case has prompted a comprehensive review of our admission practices. We're implementing new evaluation criteria that focus more heavily on clinical competence and community experience." Amara listened to these conversations with deep attention, understanding that her mother's individual struggle had created opportunities for broader change. She wrote in her journal that night, "Sometimes fighting for one person helps lots of other people too. Maybe that's why it's important to stand up when things aren't fair." The formal review hearing that had been scheduled proceeded as planned, but with dramatically different dynamics than anyone had anticipated. Instead of a defensive justification of previous decisions, it became an acknowledgement of systemic problems and a commitment to meaningful reform. Maya testified about her experience with confidence and dignity, supported by community members. who had witnessed her competence and character. Dr. Williams presented evidence about discriminatory patterns in healthcare education, while Sister Agnes spoke about the community impact of excluding qualified local residents from professional opportunities. The most powerful testimony came from the cardiac surgeon who had treated Mrs. Chen. "In 30 years of practice," he said, "I've rarely seen emergency care of the quality Ms. Johnson provided last night. Any institution that fails to recognize and nurture that level of clinical ability is failing its mission to serve the community." Hospital administrators who attended the hearing found themselves in the uncomfortable position of explaining why they had withdrawn a job offer from someone whose competence had been dramatically demonstrated just days earlier. The public nature of the proceedings, combined with media attention and community pressure, made their previous decision increasingly indefensible. "We are prepared to reinstate our employment offer," the hospital's chief nursing officer announced, along with implementing new hiring practices that focus on demonstrated clinical ability rather than educational pedigree. The hearing concluded with commitments from both institutions to reform policies that had created barriers for qualified candidates from diverse backgrounds. Maya would be readmitted to the nursing program with full support for completion of her degree, and the hospital position would be available upon her graduation. But perhaps more importantly, the process had created momentum for broader changes that would benefit future students and healthcare workers facing similar challenges. Community advocacy had forced institutional accountability, proving that ordinary people could challenge systemic barriers when they worked together with persistence and courage. As they left the hearing, Amara walked between her mother and sister, Agnes carrying the leather journal that had become her constant companion. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sidewalk, and she could see Mrs. Chen's recipe book tucked under Sister Agnes's arm, a symbol of cultural wisdom and intergenerational connection that had helped sustain their advocacy efforts. "What happens now?" Amara asked. "Now your mother becomes the nurse she was always meant to be," Sister Agnes replied, "and our community becomes stronger because we learned how to fight for what's right." Maya looked down at her daughter, seeing in her serious 8-year-old face the same determination that had driven their entire family through months of struggle and uncertainty. "And you keep learning and growing, understanding that helping people sometimes means changing the systems that prevent good care from reaching everyone who needs it." The evening ahead would bring celebration with their neighbors and supporters, phone calls to share good news with extended family, and quiet reflection on how much their lives had changed since that afternoon when Amara first noticed Sister Agnes feeding pigeons in the park. But it would also bring continued commitment to the broader work of justice and community care that had emerged from their individual struggle. The celebration at the community center that evening felt like a neighborhood festival, with families gathering to share food and mark a victory that belonged to everyone who had contributed to the advocacy campaign. Mrs. Chen, discharged from the hospital that afternoon with a new pacemaker and strict instructions for cardiac rehabilitation, sat in the place of honor, surrounded by the people who had fought for justice on Maya's behalf. Maya moved through the gathering with a lightness she hadn't felt in months, accepting congratulations and thanks from neighbors who understood that her success opened doors for their own children and grandchildren. The reinstatement to nursing school represented more than individual opportunity. It was proof that community action could challenge institutional barriers and create meaningful change. Amara carried Mrs. Chen's family recipe book, which the elderly woman had entrusted to her that morning, along with a request that meant more than any medical intervention. "I want you to have this," Mrs. Chen had said. "These recipes have been in my family for generations, passed down from mothers to daughters. but you've become like family to me, and I think you understand how important it is to care for people. The Chia small book contained dozens of handwritten recipes in Chinese characters, with English translations added in Mrs. Chen's careful script. But it also contained something more precious, detailed notes about which foods helped with different ailments, traditional remedies that had been tested across generations, and the kind of practical wisdom that formed the foundation of community health. "This is like a medical book," Amara observed, studying the careful annotations that explained how ginger tea could soothe stomach upset and which herbs helped with anxiety and sleeplessness. "Traditional healing and modern medicine aren't so different," Mrs. Chen explained. "Both are about understanding what people need and providing it with knowledge and compassion." Dr. Williams had attended the celebration with news that would reshape the trajectory of Amara's medical education. The pediatric department at St. Catherine's Hospital was launching a new community outreach program, and they wanted Amara to serve as a young ambassador, helping design health education materials that would be accessible and engaging for children. "It would be a formal position," Dr. Williams explained to Maya. "Amara would work with our education team to develop programs that teach children about health and emergency response. She would be compensated for her time, and the experience would provide excellent preparation for future medical education." Maya felt proud, but also protective, understanding the opportunity while remaining concerned about the pressures that might accompany such responsibility. "Amara is still 8 years old," she said carefully. "Any program would need to respect her developmental needs and preserve time for normal childhood activities." "Absolutely," Dr. Williams agreed. "The goal is to nurture her interests and abilities, while ensuring she has space to grow up at her own pace." Amara listened to this conversation with mixed emotions. The opportunity excited her, but she had learned important lessons about the weight of expectations and the need for balance between helping others and maintaining her own well-being. "Could I still play with my friends and do regular kid things?" she asked. "That would be required," Dr. Williams said with a smile. "The best young ambassadors are children who understand both medical concepts and childhood experiences." Sister Agnes approached their conversation, carrying a small wrapped package that she presented to Amara with ceremonial dignity. "This is from the sisters at my former convent," she explained. "They heard about your advocacy work and wanted you to have something special." Inside the wrapping was a delicate silver charm bracelet with medical symbols, a stethoscope, a heart, a caduceus, alternating with traditional religious medallions. Each charm was engraved with dates that marked significant moments in their journey. The day Amara helped Sister Agnes, the beginning of Maya's nursing program, the date of the advocacy hearing. "It's beautiful," Amara breathed, studying the intricate craftsmanship of each charm. "It's a reminder that caring for others is both a practical skill and a spiritual calling," Sister Agnes said. "You've learned both aspects, and that combination will serve you well, regardless of what path you choose." As the evening wound down, families began gathering their children and preparing to head home. Maya found herself standing with Dr. Williams and Sister Agnes, watching Amara help younger children clean up after the celebration. Even in this moment of triumph, her daughter's attention remained focused on the needs of others around her. "She's going to be an extraordinary healer," Dr. Williams observed, "not just because of her technical knowledge, but because of her instinctive understanding of how to comfort people." "I just want her to be happy," Maya replied. "All of this, the nursing school, the advocacy, the opportunities, it's only meaningful if she gets to choose her own path and find her own version of fulfillment." "I think she will," Sister Agnes said. "Children who learn early about service and justice tend to make thoughtful choices about how to use their gifts." The drive home was quiet, with Amara studying her new charm bracelet in the back seat, while Maya processed the dramatic changes that lay ahead. Nursing school would resume in 2 weeks. The hospital position was confirmed for after graduation, and their family's financial situation had stabilized with the support of community members and institutional commitments. But perhaps most importantly, they had learned that individual struggles could become community causes and that ordinary people possess the power to challenge systems that seemed immutable. The months ahead would test their ability to balance new opportunities with family stability, but they would face those challenges with confidence earned through collective action and mutual support. 2 weeks later, Maya returned to nursing school, with a confidence that reflected not just her individual victory, but the community support that had made it possible. Her classmates welcomed her back with respect, tinged by curiosity about the advocacy campaign that had forced institutional change. Several approached her privately to share their own experiences with educational barriers and discrimination. "I almost dropped out last semester because I couldn't afford childcare," confided Maria Santos, a single mother studying to become a pediatric nurse. "When I heard about your situation and how the community supported you, it made me realize I wasn't alone in struggling with these challenges." Maya discovered that her advocacy had created ripple effects beyond her own situation. The nursing school had established a new support program for non-traditional students, including childcare assistance, flexible scheduling, and mentorship from practicing nurses. The hospital had initiated similar reforms in their hiring practices, focusing evaluation criteria on demonstrated competence rather than educational pedigree. "Your case became a catalyst for changes we should have implemented years ago," Dean Richardson admitted during a private meeting with Maya. "The review process revealed biases in our systems that we hadn't adequately recognized or addressed." Amara's role as a young health ambassador at St. Catherine's Hospital began with careful attention to her developmental needs and interests. Rather than placing her in adult medical environments, the program focused on peer education and community outreach that felt natural and age-appropriate. Her first project involved creating a coloring book that taught children about basic anatomy and health concepts. Working with hospital graphic designers and child psychologists, Amara helped develop illustrations and simple explanations that made medical information accessible and engaging for young audiences. "The heart is like a pump that moves blood through your body," read one page she had helped write. "When you exercise, your heart beats faster to give your muscles extra energy. You can feel your heartbeat by putting your hand on your chest." Dr. Williams observed these sessions with admiration for Amara's natural teaching ability. The 8-year-old had an intuitive understanding of how to explain complex concepts in language her peers could understand, and she maintained enthusiasm for learning that made medical education feel like discovery rather than obligation. The charm bracelet from Sister Agnes's convent had become Amara's daily reminder of the journey that had brought their family to this point. She wore it during hospital visits and community education sessions, fingering the different charms when she needed to remember the connections between individual caring and systemic change. Maya's clinical rotations resumed with enhanced appreciation. From supervisors who had witnessed her advocacy and emergency response skills, Margaret Torres, her original mentor, welcomed her back with visible pride and increased responsibilities that reflected Maya's proven competence. "I want you to work with our new cardiac rehabilitation program," Margaret explained. "Your experience with community health and your understanding of barriers that prevent people from accessing care would be valuable in developing patient education protocols." The assignment felt perfectly suited to Maya's interests and background. She would work with cardiac patients like Sister Agnes and Mrs. Chen, helping them understand their conditions and develop sustainable lifestyle changes that supported heart health. The position combined clinical nursing with community education in ways that honored both her individual skills and her commitment to broader health equity. Jamal's response to the family's changed circumstances was characteristically mature and thoughtful. At 16, he had developed strong work habits and academic focus that positioned him well for his own educational aspirations. The scholarship opportunities that had emerged from their family's public advocacy included programs specifically designed for siblings of community health advocates. "I want to study business and community development," he told Maya one evening as they reviewed his college preparation timeline. "Watching what happened with your nursing school situation taught me how important it is to understand systems and how to change them from the inside." His perspective on advocacy had been shaped by observing the practical challenges of organizing community support while maintaining family stability. Jamal understood that sustainable change required both grassroots organizing and institutional knowledge, and he wanted to develop skills that could support future community justice efforts. The most significant validation of their journey came when Mrs. Chen returned home from cardiac rehabilitation with a clean bill of health and renewed energy for community involvement. Her recovery had been aided not just by excellent medical care, but by the emotional support of neighbors who had rallied around Maya's cause. "You saved my life twice," she told Amara during a visit that included teaching her to prepare traditional healing teas using recipes from the family cookbook, first with your medical knowledge, and second by inspiring everyone to fight for what's right. The cooking lesson took place in Mrs. Chen's kitchen, with Amara carefully measuring herbs and learning about the properties of different ingredients. The session combined practical skills with cultural education, creating connections between traditional wisdom and modern medical understanding. "In my family, we always said that healing begins in the kitchen," Mrs. Chen explained as they prepared ginger tea for digestion and chamomile blend for anxiety relief. "Understanding how food affects the body is as important as knowing how medicines work." Dr. Williams had arranged for Maya to present her community health insights at a regional nursing conference, recognizing that her experience with advocacy and systemic barriers provided valuable perspectives for healthcare professionals. The invitation represented another form of institutional validation, acknowledgement that community voices deserved platforms within professional medical discourse. As spring approached, their family had found a rhythm that balanced individual aspirations with collective commitment to community health and justice. The challenges ahead included Maya's graduation requirements, Amara's continued development as a young health educator, and Jamal's college preparation, but they faced these opportunities with confidence, grounded in proven resilience and community support. 1 year later, the bronze plaque mounted beside the entrance to the community center bore simple but powerful words: "In honor of ordinary heroes who transform communities through extraordinary compassion." The dedication ceremony had taken place on a warm spring morning, with Maya delivering the keynote address in her crisp new nursing uniform and Amara standing beside Sister Agnes, both wearing matching silver medallions that commemorated their shared journey. Maya had graduated summa cum laude from the nursing program, her academic success complemented by clinical evaluations that consistently praised her patient care and leadership abilities. The conditional job offer from St. Catherine's Hospital had become a permanent position in their community health outreach program, where she developed educational initiatives that addressed healthcare barriers for underserved populations. Nursing. "School taught me medical procedures," Maya said during her graduation speech, "but my daughter taught me that healing begins with paying attention to people who need our help. This community taught me that individual compassion becomes powerful when it's supported by collective action for justice. Amara, now 9 years old, had grown into her role as a young health ambassador with grace and maturity that impressed everyone who worked with her. The hospital's pediatric education program had expanded significantly, with Amara's coloring books and teaching materials being distributed to schools and community centers throughout the region. Her latest project involved creating a series of videos that taught children basic emergency response skills, always emphasizing the importance of getting adult help while demonstrating age-appropriate ways to provide initial assistance. The videos had been adopted by the Red Cross for their youth education programs, giving Amara's work national reach and impact. "The most important thing to remember," she said in one video, speaking directly to the camera with the confidence of someone who had learned through experience, is that helping people means staying calm and doing what you know how to do while making sure grown-ups are coming to help too. Dr. Williams had received a promotion to Chief of Community Cardiology, a new position created partly in response to the advocacy work that had emerged from Maya's case. Her medical school diploma hung in her new office alongside photographs from community health fairs and a letter from the Surgeon General recognizing her contributions to healthcare equity. "What happened with your family changed how we think about community engagement," she told Amara during one of their regular mentoring sessions. "Medical institutions are finally understanding that real health improvement requires partnerships with the communities we serve." Sister Agnes, now in her 70s but still vital and engaged, had become the unofficial coordinator of the community center's health and wellness programs. Her daily routine no longer centered on feeding pigeons alone. She now supervised a thriving urban garden where families grew vegetables and herbs for both nutrition and traditional healing purposes. The garden had emerged from Mrs. Chen's suggestion that communities needed spaces to connect traditional wisdom with modern health knowledge. Sister Agnes had embraced the project with enthusiasm, seeing it as a way to honor both her sister Margaret's memory and the community solidarity that had supported Maya's advocacy. Margaret always said that healing happens in relationship. Sister Agnes explained to a group of children who were learning to tend medicinal plants. Individual knowledge matters, but sharing that knowledge with others is what creates real community health. Mrs. Chen had recovered completely from her cardiac episodes and channeled her energy into teaching traditional cooking and healing practices to interested neighbors. Her family recipe book had become the foundation for a community cookbook that combined traditional remedies with modern nutritional science, creating a resource that honored cultural wisdom while providing evidence-based health information. "Food is medicine," she taught during weekly cooking classes that drew participants from across the city. "Understanding how different ingredients affect your body is knowledge every family should have." Jamal had graduated high school with honors and received a full scholarship to study public policy and community development at the State University. His personal statement for college applications had focused on the lessons he learned watching his family navigate institutional barriers and community organizing. "I want to understand how systems work and how to change them so that other families don't have to fight as hard as mine did for basic opportunities," he had written. "Community advocacy taught me that individual success means nothing if it doesn't create pathways for others to succeed too." The community center's first aid and health education programs had become a model for similar initiatives in neighboring areas. Maya served as a consultant for hospitals and schools interested in developing community-based health education, sharing expertise gained through both formal training and grassroots organizing experience. Amara's journal writing had evolved into a more sophisticated practice of reflection and goal setting that helped her process the increasing complexity of her role as a young health educator. Her entries now included observations about health disparities, questions about medical ethics, and dreams about future contributions to community well-being. One recent entry read, "I used to think helping people was about knowing the right medical things to do. Now I understand it's also about making sure everyone has the chance to learn and use those skills." Sister Agnes says that's the difference between charity and justice. The afternoon sun streamed through the community center windows as Amara helped younger children with homework while keeping one eye on the small park, where Sister Agnes maintained her daily routine with the pigeons. The scene looked similar to that first day when everything had changed, but the similarities were surface deep. Now the park included benches donated by grateful families, a small memorial garden honoring community members who had passed away, and information boards that provided basic health education and emergency contact numbers. The community center housed a lending library of medical supplies, offered regular health screenings, and served as a hub for neighborhood organizing around healthcare access and equity. Maya arrived to pick up Amara with the quiet satisfaction of someone whose daily work aligned with her deepest values. Her nursing uniform bore a small pin that Amara had designed, a heart surrounded by hands, symbolizing the community support that made individual caring possible. "Ready to go home?" Maya asked, finding Amara exactly where she expected, surrounded by children and helping with both homework and minor scraped knees. "Almost," Amara replied, applying a bandage to Marcus's latest playground injury, while explaining why cleaning cuts prevented infections. "Just finishing up here." As they walked home together through their neighborhood, now marked by small but significant improvements in community health infrastructure, Maya reflected on how much had changed since that afternoon when her 7-year-old daughter had simply noticed someone who needed help. The lesson that had emerged was both simple and profound. The smallest hands could indeed carry the biggest hearts, and those hearts, when supported by community wisdom and institutional accountability, could transform not just individual lives, but entire systems of care. Sometimes, the most important medical intervention was teaching people to pay attention to each other, and sometimes the most powerful prescription was organizing communities to fight for justice together.